Want to welcome Senator Ted Cruz into the Rick Roberts Show. Senator, it's always great to talk with you. Thanks for being along.
Well, Rick, great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
You know, I see a lot of bills. I see a lot of legislation. Every once in a while, after 20 years, something catches my eye. This did. Tell people about the bill to hold people responsible in these liberal cities that told their police to stand down during the protest.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, far too many Democratic politicians are abandoning their citizens, abandoning their cities, abandoning their communities to the radical left. And we have seen violent riots. We've seen mobs engaging in physical assault against citizens, firebombing police cars, looting and burning small businesses, many of them owned by African Americans or Hispanics in inner cities. We've seen them murdering police officers. And what is so infuriating is these Democratic politicians that are facilitating this lawlessness, that are ordering their police departments to stand down, not to protect small businesses, not to protect the communities, and to give in to the mob. And at its very worst, we see these lawless zones, the Chaz or CHOP autonomous zone, where law enforcement utterly withdrew, and they allowed the warlords to run free, and it resulted in the murder of a 14-year-old and a 19-year-old. And
right.
So I've introduced legislation that if a public official withdraws police protection, withdraws fulfilling the responsibility of protecting the citizens, that anyone whose home or business is injured, anyone who faces physical harm, can sue that municipality and get damages, that you don't have the right, in fact, get triple damages because it is lawless when you have politicians saying we're going to prevent the police from doing their job.
I can't tell you how much I agree with this. I know Minneapolis, they came up with a figure, $55 million, I think it was, to start. That wasn't the total figure. And they went to the federal government and said, hey, we're going to need $55 million for rebuilding. Well, the government said, no. You told your cops to stand down, so the burning, the looting, the stealing, shooting, stabbing, that's on you. And you know what? Senator Cruz, that's the way it should be.
That is exactly right. You look at just Minneapolis alone. Over 700 buildings were damaged, burned, or destroyed by the lawless mob, and it was the virtue-signaling woke politicians who tied the hands. Look, the police officers want to do their job. They're begging, let us do their jobs, and the idiot politicians won't let them do that. You know, the Democratic Attorney General in Minnesota, Keith Ellison,
right,
who is a leftist radical. In the middle of this, what he had to say is he said, I stand with Antifa. Antifa are the terrorists that are attacking and assaulting and burning and murdering their fellow citizens. And when the chief law enforcement officer in the state says, I'm with the terrorist, we know something is badly, badly wrong. I think the president was absolutely right to turn down Minnesota's request for federal aid. You don't get to order your police to pull back, let your city burn to the ground, and then ask the federal taxpayers to bail you out. That is local officials and state officials in a fundamental dereliction of duty.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Coming from a law enforcement family background, I see it from both sides. And I don't know that I've ever seen it as bad as it is now. You heard about Berkeley passing that ordinance. The cops can't make traffic stops anymore. They're going to have unarmed civilians do that. And, Senator Cruz, a traffic stop is considered one of the most dangerous acts a police officer can do. How many people have to get killed before they say, okay, this is a bad idea?
Yeah, so you've got a traffic stop. They want unarmed civilians. In any traffic stop, you don't know who you're engaging. You don't know if they're drunk, if they're on drugs, if they're armed. You don't know if they're a violent criminal. And we see every year police officers who are murdered in traffic stops where they come up to someone and someone pulls out a gun and shoots them. And now Berkeley's saying, well, we're not going to have trained and licensed peace officers in that situation. We're just going to have civilians. I had some fun on Twitter yesterday imagining how exactly this works out, of some, Berkeley civilian wandering up going, dude, maybe you shouldn't be driving 70 miles an hour drunk in a school zone.
That's probably pretty close to what it would be like. It's insane. Listen, I know our time is short.
And there is an important point, Rick, as you know, which is we should stand up and speak the truth, but you also got to laugh at some point. You got to keep a sense of humor in the face of the insanity. You got to be willing to laugh at the stupidity of it all.
And there's plenty out there for entertainment value, that's for sure. Listen, this piece, this op-ed piece you did for the Washington Examiner, if anybody ever was laboring under the sad misconception that Democrats are for the working man, you need to read this op-ed, because you just tear Biden's whole plan apart. Give folks a thumbnail sketch of that.
Well, Joe Biden has come out with what he claims is a $2 trillion plan, the Green New Deal that he wants to embrace. And it's real simple. He wants to destroy energy jobs in Texas and across the country. He wants to destroy manufacturing jobs in Texas and across the country. And it does a great job of appealing to the giant Democratic donors in New York City and San Francisco. But the actual working men and women, you look at the energy revolution that Texas has led, the shale revolution that has driven down the cost of energy, that's brought manufacturing jobs back to America. And the view of Joe Biden and the Democrats is those working men and women, by the way, many of whom are union members whose families have been Democrats for generations. Their daddies were Democrats. Their grandfathers were Democrats. And today's Democratic Party has said, if you're a working man, go jump in a lake. They're not with you, and they're going to eliminate your jobs. It's cruel, it's wrong, it's elitist, and it's bad for America. But sadly, the Democratic Party, they've unleashed the craziest voices in their party, and that's who they're listening to.
Yeah, it would be devastating for the state of Texas. You're absolutely right, in loss of jobs, and they don't want to frack and they want wind power. Look, I'm all for alternative sources of energy, but I don't want to get rid of what I got until I find something else, and they don't seem to get that. As I look at this,
and as you know, Rick, look, Texas is number one in the nation in wind power. When it comes to energy, I'm for all of the above. I'm for everything. I'm for oil and gas and coal and wind and solar and nuclear and biofuels and you name it. But that's going to come from the market. It's going to come from private sector entrepreneurs. It's going to come from people investing. And there's going to come a time, I don't know when it's going to be, but there'll come a time in the future, maybe 50 years, maybe 100 years, I don't know when we'll move away from oil and gas. You look at energy. There was a time when everyone used wood-burning stoves. Then there was a time when we used coal. There was a time when we used steel, used steam. All of that has moved forward. There's a time when we used kerosene. There will be another energy. And you know what? I'm willing to bet whatever the next energy is, and you and I don't know what it is right now, I think it'll be Texans leading that innovation because this state was built by energy entrepreneurs. What makes Texas Texas is not that we are blessed to have some resources in the ground. It's that we're blessed to have resources above the ground with entrepreneurs who take risks and know how to seize an opportunity. But I promise you, whatever the next energy is, it's not going to be thought up by some bureaucrat in a windowless office in Washington, D.C. It's going to be a wildcatter, I think, in Texas, investing in the next great horizon.
I think you're absolutely right, and we've talked about this. The next energy is going to come through progression. When we've had a chance to test it and know that the resource is there, it's not going to come as a political platform. So I absolutely agree with that. I've got to ask you very quickly. Again, I know our time is short, but the defund the police movement. Now, of course, we talked a little bit about Minneapolis and other cities trying to get the federal government to pay for all the damage they allowed. do you see this defund the police, in some cases dismantling the police departments? Do you see that continuing? I mean, I don't see any good end to this.
Well, unfortunately, I do see it continuing, and I think the Democratic Party, they have unleashed the angriest, the craziest voices among them, and it's very hard to close Pandora's box.
Right.
You look at what we're seeing. Bill de Blasio in New York City is already trying to cut $1 billion from the NYPD. Their crime rate is skyrocketing. Their murder rate is skyrocketing. And Bill de Blasio is saying the problem is we have too many cops. Let's take $1 billion. And as soon as de Blasio said that, and this guy, by the way, is a former Marxist organizer and supporter of the Nicaraguan Sandinistas. That's de Blasio. AOC comes in and blasts him and says, you know what, de Blasio's not radical enough. Cut even more from the NYPD. I'll tell you, I'm a Texan, but I stand with the NYPD. And what they're proposing, defunding and abolishing police departments. It is foolish, it is radical, it is dangerous, but it is also racist. You know, many on the left like to wrap themselves in the phrase and slogan, Black Lives Matter. All right, great. I agree. Black lives absolutely matter. And if you defund the police, you are going to kill many, many more African-American women, children, innocent people that live in inner cities, that if you pull the cops out of them, more of them are going to be killed, more of them are going to be attacked, more of them are going to be sexually assaulted. And what they're doing is wrong, and it's dangerous.
I agree. I'm reminded of the grandfather, brokenhearted. His grandson, 11-year-old, took 4th of July, took him over to see his mom, and he was cut down by gunfire. And you know, he was just heartbroken. And he said this on national television. He said, if black lives really matter, which I think they do, let's stop killing each other. But that's That's not something Black Lives Matter wants to get involved with.
No. And let me put out something to you, Rick. Imagine some politician were to make the following proposal. We're going to take all the police officers out of predominantly African-American neighborhoods, and we're going to move them all into predominantly white neighborhoods. Now, that politician would rightly be denounced as a racist bigot. How dare you deny law enforcement to minority neighborhoods? You know what? That's what the radical left is trying to do, and it's crazy and it's wrong. I'm grateful for the police officers that keep my family safe and your family safe, and I think taking away police protection from vulnerable communities is a terrible, terrible idea.
Well, listen, you're absolutely right on every point. We don't talk often enough. I like your style. You're straight to the point, not a lot of dancing around the issues. And I will tell you this. When I heard that China was going to put some sanctions out because, you know, they were upset. Well, your sanctions on me. Well, Ted Cruz can't come to China. And I said on the air, I said, well, there goes the Cruz family vacation. And I'll be darned, you tweeted out, well, there goes the vacation after a short stop in Tehran. I about fell out of my chair.
Well, look, it's you know, earlier this week, I went to bed one night, woke up in the morning, and you know, I use my cell phone as my alarm clock. First thing, so the alarm goes off, I look at the phone. First thing I see is about 5 texts telling me, well, over the night while you were sleeping, the communist government of China has formally sanctioned you, and they have banned you from China. And I got to say, I wear it as a badge of honor because the Chinese communists, they are murdering, lying, torturing, evil bastards. They've got 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps. They violate human rights. They have a one-child policy. They forcibly enforce forced sterilizations and forced abortions. They engage in rampant censorship. And I'll tell you, their cover-up of the coronavirus outbreak in Wuhan, where they deliberately covered it up, they are directly responsible for over 500,000 lives lost to this pandemic worldwide. So I am not remotely shy when it comes to speaking the truth and standing up and leading the fight on China. And I got to say, Rick, suddenly in Washington, politicians have discovered that China is dangerous. I have been a leading China hawk for the last 8 years, and there were a whole bunch of politicians, Democrats and Republicans, who loved to sing China's praises and couldn't see the dangers. And listen, there's a reason why they sanctioned me, because they don't like that I'm leading the fight against them. But I am welcoming suddenly new allies who've discovered in the last 6 months, as they've seen the devastation China's caused, that they've discovered just how malevolent these communist tyrants and oppressors are.
Amen to that. Senator Cruz, man, you're fighting a good fight. Keep doing the good work for not only the people of Texas, but the entire United States. What have you got? What are you looking at? What's down the road? What are you working on?
Well, look, I'm fighting, number one, to defend America, defend our founding principles. These mobs that are attacking our country, they're trying to tear down statues of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and James Madison and Lincoln and Grant. Because, you know, Rick, Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant, they were really big Confederates. That's the reason they're going after us. It is ignorance, and it's fundamentally anti-American. I'll give you what it got, the real point of the theater of the absurd. They defaced a statue of Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist, African-American, true American hero, and they're defacing Frederick Douglass. At this point, they're not standing against slavery. They're not standing against racism. They just hate America, and they're trying to tear down everything about us. And I view my responsibility as to stand up and fight for America, fight for the principles that built this country, fight for the Constitution and Bill of Rights, fight for the free enterprise system that has made America the greatest country in the history of the world. And that's something I'm proud to do every day, to fight for 29 million Texans.
Senator Cruz, keep the fight going. We appreciate it more than we can tell you. And I hope, and from one guy with a beard to another guy with a beard, I thought I was going to see you on the front page of GQ magazine. Your beard got more hits on social media than I've ever seen.
Well, you know, it's important to keep folks guessing, and one of the great virtues of the beard is, for whatever reason, it seems to drive lefties nuts on Twitter, so that's got to be a good thing.
Senator Cruz, we will talk again soon. All the best to you and your family.
Take care. God bless.